Our next speaker will share with us lessons on teamwork, leadership, and most importantly, how you can manage your mind through a crisis. Based on his own personal experiences, he'll help you create your own flight plan towards your inner hero. Please help me welcome survivor of the Miracle on the Hudson, Dave Sanderson.
Tonight, Miracle on the Hudson, a jetliner filled with passengers, crashes in the frigid waters off Manhattan, and everyone on board survives.
U.S. Airways Flight 1549 had just taken off from LaGuardia Airport. A flock of birds knocking out both of the plane's engines.
Cactus 1549, first. Cactus 1529, turn right 280, you can land runway 180. We can't do it.
Even without power, though, the pilots managed to maneuver the Airbus A320 northward over the Bronx, make a sharp turn south, then follow the Hudson River alongside Manhattan Island, losing altitude along the way, and finally coming to rest on the river.
The plane then skimmed across the water 100 yards or more before coming to a rest just off Midtown Manhattan.
Many passengers didn't think they'd make it. One man turned his cell phone on so his body could be found through the phone's GPS. A woman left a message for her husband. Tell the kids I love them.
Joining me now is David Sanderson. He was one of the last passengers out of the plane. I understand you were actually in the plane after it landed for 7 minutes. Was it filling up with water?
Yeah, once we got everybody out, I stood in the plane to make sure everybody was out. And it was filling up pretty rapidly, and it got up to about waist level. And then when everybody was out in the lifeboats, I then stepped out on the edge there, and it was about knee deep at that point, and I just jumped in and started trying to swim to the first port I could find.
Chesley B. Sullenberger III, a former fighter pilot, used 40 years of experience to somehow land the powerless plane on the icy waters of the Hudson River, a feat that's being called a miracle.
Take me inside the plane, take me inside as this plane impacts on the water. What was going on inside?
No, it was stone quiet in there, which was amazing to me, because I don't think anybody cross-referenced what was going on. I think that was a saving grace. And I just want to say, I admire your skills. I honor the way you managed your state. And now I do listen to the flight attendants every flight. I know exactly where everything is. I know exactly where the exits are. I know where that life is right there.
I'm really proud of a dear, dear friend of mine by the name of Dave Sanderson. Every one of us got a hero inside. Every one of us has a capacity in the most difficult times to find our strength. And it's nice to see a miracle on the Hudson and know that part of that miracle was an extraordinary pilot, and another part of that was a dear friend who, even when he could barely function, made sure other people's lives were being saved and supported.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. Well, as you know, on January 15th, 2009, another tragedy could have happened up in New York City. Instead, a miracle did occur. There were 155 people on U.S. Airways Flight 1549, and I just one of those that day that were blessed. Next few minutes, I'm going to share with you some of the highlights of that day and how certainty and courage created a miraculous outcome from a chaotic and potentially tragic situation. And after the captain glided the plane over the George Washington Bridge, we crashed into the river. And it was a hard hit. He estimates it hit between 100 and 120 miles an hour. So when we hit, I went all the way back in my seat and all the way up in my seat, just like that. When I came up, I looked out the window, and I saw light coming through the window. So I knew I had a shot, but I wasn't out. If you saw the plane landed, the entire bottom of the plane was taken off. And somebody actually did listen to the flight crew, went to that closest exit, which may be behind you, tried to open up that door. So you have water coming in from underneath the plane, water coming in from the back of the plane. So depending where you were on the plane, and I was towards the back of the plane, water was anywhere from ankle to knee to waist deep, just like that. People ask me all the time is, how do these people get on these wings? I'm going to tell you what happened. When we hit, as you remember, I went back in my seat, the seats broke. When the seats broke, people got extremely resourceful, and all of a sudden you saw people jumping up on top of the seats, walking down the seats to get out of the plane. That's how most people got out. But I didn't do that. Didn't even think about getting on top of a seat. My thought was, get to the aisle, get up, and get out. But When I got to the aisle, something happened not only changed that day for me, but probably changed the entire direction of my life. My mom kicked into my head. My mom passed away in 1997. But there was something she would tell me when I was a child that just popped into my head at that moment. And it was, if you do the right thing, God will take care of you. And to me, the right thing was you take care of other people first. See, I always grew up where team came first. So I just waited in the back of the plane until we got everybody out. Now you got to remember, not only did the top of the seats break, but the bins broke. So now you've had luggages flown out. So now every time you took a step to get out of the plane, you hit something. At that point, you didn't know whether you're hitting a body or a piece of luggage. But all the further I could get was 10F. And the first picture that's happened to be released on Good Morning America was me trying to get out of the plane. But when I got out, it was an amazing sight. There was no room on the wing for me. No room on the boat for me, but it was an amazing sight. People were already being rescued. You may have heard it said, if you watched anything about this, is that people say the Skiles and Sullenberger got everybody down that day, and the crew and passengers got everybody out. But the real heroes of the day were the first responders. And the first of the first responders was the New York waterways, the ferries. They were there about 2 minutes after this plane crashed. You can find a miracle in a lot of ways. But having somebody there to rescue you after a plane crash in ice-cold water in just a couple minutes, that's the start of a miracle. And if you look at this picture closely, you notice I'm holding on to the lifeboat, and the reason why is this. I don't know anybody here knows anything about the Hudson River, but it's got an extremely fast current. This plane actually floated down the river about a half a mile in 24 minutes. So this little lifeboat kept going in and out from the plane, and they kept screaming at me, hold on, hold on. So that's why I held on to the little lifeboat as close as I could to the wing, waist deep in the 36-degree water for about 7 minutes. But I looked up, and I looked out the wing, and something just happened to catch my eye. And it was a lady, and she was holding on to a baby. In fact, I found out later she actually had 2 kids on this plane. She had a 3-year-old on this lifeboat, and a 3-month-old she was holding on to, and man, she wasn't moving. And 2 things crossed my mind really quick. First thing was, I said, man, if she tries to get on this lifeboat with this child, now you got to remember, not only is it 36-degree water, but you've got jet fuel all over the place. I don't know if you've ever walked on jet fuel. It's extremely slick. And my thought was, man, if she tries to get on the lifeboat, slips, gets in the river. But it's amazing how your mind works in times of crisis, because man, it flipped quickly to the other side. And it's like, how am I going to get out of here? She's standing in the middle of this wing, and she's not moving. So I just did what came naturally. I yelled at her. I yelled, throw the baby, throw the baby. Now, Kaylee didn't think she was going to throw her baby. I didn't think that was probably going to be an option. But what happened, though, is I got her attention. And she looked at me. She's like, what? It's amazing where people are in times of crisis. Look at this picture closely. There's a lady with blonde hair, their head turned to the right. She just happened to be a mother of 3 from Knoxville, Tennessee. And when she heard me yell this at this lady, she looked up at the lady and said, give me the baby, give me the baby. And all of a sudden, she turns, gives her the baby, gets on the lifeboat. Now people are getting off the plane, getting on the ferry. 2 years ago, that lady sent me this package. There were 2 things in this package when I first got it. First, there was a note that said, thank you for helping my family. But the second was a picture of the captain with the baby that day that was saved, as a sort of a thank you. Now, Cameron, I don't think I did anything that significant by yelling, throw the baby. I don't think that was one of my finer moments, you know? I don't think the lady from Knoxville did anything that significant. See, I think the lady who gave up her baby did something pretty significant. Because just think how much faith it had to take to give your baby up to some guy who's yelling at you and some lady you don't even know, and you give your baby up. But I'm still on the plane. And things are happening all over the place. And there's one thing about people in New York and New Jersey, is they know how to respond. See, unfortunately, they've had to respond to things before. So they don't sit around and wait for someone to say, now you go do this. They just go and do it. And one of those guys happened to be a tugboat captain. And I got a chance to talk to him a couple years ago. Heard his story. It was pretty cool. He said he heard the all call go out. He was going to bring his tugboat out, and he had a plan. And his plan was he was going to throw a rope to this lifeboat, try to pull the lifeboat out of the way to clean up the situation, which was a great plan. What he wasn't planning on is people standing on a wing. So there's no way he could get across the wing. So he got beeped out. The boats are coming in. So he starts backing his tugboat out. And when he does that, he hits the front of the plane. But candidly, that's not that big of a deal, unless you're on the plane. And I was on the plane. Because when it hit the plane, it shook the plane. When it shook the plane, I felt water go up my backside. And that's the moment, all of a sudden, I thought, Titanic. I remember that movie. When that boat tipped up, it sucked everything down with it. And my thought was, man, do not be sucked down a plane. You are this close, man, to getting out. Do not be sucked down a plane. So I always stop here and I thank my mom and my dad. Because if they hadn't given me swimming lessons when I was a child, I may never get off this plane. And see, that's one of the biggest lessons of that day is this right here. Of all these things you learn all your life, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago, one day you may have to employ it to save yourself or save somebody else. Sullenberger had to use a skill called gliding. I had to use a skill called swimming. So I got on the edge of the plane, jumped in and swam to the closest boat that I could find. Happened to be in this wing. When I got there, all of a sudden I'm there, and now they're yelling, you got to climb, you got to climb. When I yelled up, I can't. Then my mom kicked into my head again. Because the word my mom hated most in life was the word can't. See, when I was a child, if you said I can't to my mom, she said, if you can't, you must do it. She made you do it. So I never said it to my mom, but I said it. So I got one arm up, felt somebody grab it. Got the other arm up, felt somebody grab it. To this day, I do not know who these two gentlemen are. And they pulled me on the ferry. And that's how I got off the plane. Now think back to 2009. Go back in your head. There wasn't a lot of positive things happening in this country, sort of like today. But all of a sudden you have a captain, a crew, and a set of passengers that did something that never had been done in the history of aviation. One team, one goal, and one miracle. And it gave people hope. There's a passage in the Bible that says suffering produces endurance. Endurance produces character. Character produces hope. And hope does not disappoint us. And that's not only what happened that day, but that's why now I get the opportunity to speak all over the world, sharing in much more detail than I've shared with you today, the strategies and lessons of that day to people. And one of the lessons I want to leave with you is this. It's a lesson around teamwork. I do interviews pretty much. Any new city I go in, I do interviews. And one of the questions I usually get is, why do you think this happened the way it did? And my answer is because the passenger makeup of the plane, the team. And the people all of a sudden look at me, I'm like, just think of the situation. This plane had one family, a few older people, and a bunch of business people like you and me, who are used to working together as a team, who have leaders who step up, who are outcome focused. Just think, you had 155 people who did not know each other, who did not care about each other, within 4 or 5 minutes, pull off something that had never been pulled off in the history of aviation. So Angela, I want to say thank you for inviting me here today. I want to say may God bless you and may God bless your organizations, but most importantly right now, may God bless the United States of America. Thank you for having me today.